Hello, welcome. There are basically two things you need to remember for this topic, and that is when you're picking the highest common factor, you go for the lowest powers, and when you're picking the lowest common multiple, you pick the highest powers. If you remember that, then you're basically done. So we just go straight in and look at an example where you've got something like this, two numbers, and they're in prime factorization form. And you're told to work out the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple. So what do we do here? Well, we just go through factor by factor, and in this case, start with 2. So 2 cubed and 2 to the 4. What's the lowest power? Because we're doing the highest common factor. In that case, it's 2 cubed. And then we go to 3, and 3 squared is going to be the lowest power instead of 3 to the 11. And then you get on to 5. And now with 5, it doesn't appear in the top number. So what you need to realize is that 5 to the 0 is the same as 1. And if you don't see a 5 appearing, it's a bit like 5 to the 0 or 1, because 1 doesn't change anything if you multiply by 1. So basically, we're picking the lowest power. It's like picking 5 to the 0, which basically means we're picking 1. Now, we don't tend to write down times by 1, so we just leave it. Now with 7, same thing's happening. It doesn't appear in the second number, so we note that 7 to the 0 is 1. In fact, anything to the 0 is 1. And so we don't need to write down 7. So that's it, that's the answer. Now for the lowest common multiple, what we do is we pick the highest power. So in this case, that's 2 to the 4, 3 to the 11 this time. And now we go for 5. Now we need to realize that 5 to the power of 1 is the same as 5. So in this case, we generally just write down 5. We could write 5 to the 1, but usually we just write 5. And then similarly, we realize that 7 to the 1 is 7. So the highest power out of 7 to the 0 and 7 to the 1 is 7 to the 1. So that's then the answer. Now in this case, you don't really need to write down what those actually multiply to. Nobody's interested. That's fine. Okay. Now, next thing is when we've got, so we want to find the highest common factor and lowest common multiple of these two numbers. And you might think, oh, well, it's easy to factorize those, but you might not know that there's actually a function on the calculator that lets you do this. And I'll show you. So if you type in 324 up here, and if you press Shift Fact, it actually has the number there, 3 squared times 3 to the 4. That is the prime factorization. So be aware that you can actually check your answer. Now, that's not to say you can do that instead. You should still do the factorization, and it doesn't take long. You just do it by hand. So what is that? 162, 81 goes into 3, and so on and so on. There, done. So it doesn't take too long just to do that, and then you can see, well, it's 2 squared times 3 to the 4. That's 324, and that was what the calculator said. And then again, you can do the 72 number very, very quickly. You know, it really doesn't take long. Do it any way you want, really. I think this method's quite reliable, quite quick. And then that. So we have 2 cubes times 3 squared. Now, I'll just show you on the calculator again, so you can see how to do that and double check the answer. And this is what I would recommend, using the calculator to check the answer more than working it out. So let's just check. So you type in 72, and now you have to press equals, so it appears there, and then you press Shift Fact. 2 cubed times 3 squared. Hooray, got it right. Okay. So again, just to reiterate that calculator step should be a checking mechanism, not a substitute for the working. So you should do the working, but it is probably worth just checking. And you might not have known that. If you don't have that calculator, I suggest you get it. It's by far the best one. Okay, and then here we go. So let's just quickly go through this as a reinforce what we've been doing. Lowest power, highest common factor means the lowest power. So we're picking 2 squared in this case, and then we're picking 3 squared as well. And for the lowest common multiple, we're picking the highest power, so that's 2 cubed times 3 to the 4. Now, in this case, you could actually work out what the number is. That's 4 times 9, so that's 36. This is 8 times 81. Actually, that's a little bit harder, but whatever it is, 648, something like that. Not particularly interesting. I think generally it doesn't matter if you leave it like this or this. So the next bit is really just to show you how hard can this topic get. You might think that's really easy, but this is about as hard as it gets. This is what they can throw at you. And this is actually from an edXcel question. Doesn't really matter. And they give you, say, 3 numbers, but they give them to you in terms of some unknowns. So they'll give you the first few numbers like this, 7 to the 4. And then number C, here we go, we get P and Q and R. So it's quite overwhelming sometimes. You've got a lot of information, a lot of numbers in front of you, and they give you some more information. They tell you that the highest common factor is 2 cubes times 7, and the lowest common multiple of A and C is this thing, 2 to the 4 times 3 to the 5 times 5 squared times 7 cubed. Okay, and then you've got to work out what's P, what's Q, and what's R. And all you do here is what we've done before. And you basically just start with the first bit of information they've given you. So highest common factor of B and C is this thing. So okay, let's look at B and C. And we've got 2 cubed. So we're looking for the lowest powers. So the lowest power out of 2 cubed and 2 to the P gives you 2 cubed. Well, that just means that 3 is the lowest number, which doesn't tell you what P is. P could be 4, could be 5, 6, anything above or equal to 3. Now, what about the 7? 7 to the 4 and 7 to the R, we need to know the lowest power is just 7. And remember from before, 7 is the same as 7 to the 1. So that tells us that R has to be 1 in order for that to be the highest common factor. And then you look at the second bit of information and you just go through this in the same manner. So 2 to the 4, and we're looking for the highest powers, 2 to the 4. So, and we're looking at A and C, so careful here, this is where people like me often go wrong. Just be careful, you're looking at the right number, because the numbers are lined up, but this is 2, this is 3. So just be a bit careful. 2 to the P, and there's no 2 occurring here. So the highest power out of 2 to the 0 and 2 to the P is 4, so we know that P is 4. And then you look at the 3s. Well, we don't really need to look at the 3s because that's just given to us. The highest power is 3 to the 5. And then we look at the 5s, however, and there's a Q involved. So the highest power out of 5 and 5 to the Q is 5 squared. Now remember, 5 is just 5 to the 1, so Q must be 2. That must be our 5 squared. So Q is 2, and that's it. Done. So when you have a lot of information given to you like this, don't sort of panic, just go through line by line really what they've asked, what they've said, and then you can do it. Okay, that's pretty much the whole topic. I will just mention one other thing, which is where they don't explicitly say find the lowest common multiple, but it is what is expected. And that is where they've got a question like the following, where you've got something that goes off every 5 minutes and something that goes off every 6 minutes. And they say, when do they both happen at the same time? And you can just count and go 5, 10, 15, and then 6, 12, 18, and so on, and find that it's 30. Or you could work out that that's actually the lowest common multiple. So a typical question might be, there's a buzzer that goes off every 8 minutes and a bell that goes off every 10 minutes. When do they next go off together? They go off at 10 in the morning. When do they next sound together? And basically you work out the lowest common multiple of 8 and 10, which is not 80, it's 40 in that case. So the answer is then 1040. So that's just one example. Well, so that's just the one other type of question that can come up. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Goodbye.